Iran is lashing out at us and Saudi Arabia after a pair of terror attacks in Tehran. The Islamic State is claiming responsibility. It would be their first successful attack inside Iran. The State Department has condemned the attacks, even as Tehran issued a statement blaming the United States. It reads, quote, "The public opinion of the world, especially Iran, recognizes this terrorist attack, which took place a week after a joint meeting of the United States president and the head of one of the region's backward governments, which constantly supports fundamentalist terrorists, as very significant," end quote. Virginia Congressman Scott Taylor is a former Navy SEAL and a member of the House Appropriations Committee and the Subcommittee on Homeland Security. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
What do you make of Iran blaming us?
Well, I think, Iran, they have their own domestic political needs, and they have to shore up their base, of course. I think it's a mistake, though. I think that, the fact that the Islamic State, and let me preface this by saying you have to have your thoughts and prayers to any innocent victims of terror anywhere around the world. But you have the Iranian government. They probably don't want to admit that they've been penetrated by the Islamic State right in their capital. At the same time, they should be very cautious and careful, because that kind of rhetoric against Saudi Arabia, as we know, is one of their rivals in the region. I mean, that's an act of war. So they have to be pretty careful about that rhetoric, because that could lead to some unintended consequences of potential violence.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I said Saudi Arabia in my leading comments, but they call them a backward government, Saudi Arabia.
Well, there's no question that the Iranians and the Saudis, they fight for sort of regional dominance, and they're constantly issuing, insults like that against each other all the time. But this is much more harsh and has much more potential, again, for escalation. So they should be cautious about it. I understand they're dealing with their own domestic politics and trying to show that that they were penetrated by the Islamic State, but that's dangerous, and that kind of rhetoric.
Congressman, you pointed out the irony too of Iran actually talking about supporting terror groups. Let's pop up on the screen. Well, their hands are not clean in this regard. Hezbollah, Hamas, Hezbollah in Iraq, Shia fighters to support Assad's regime, brutal crackdown inside Syria. I mean, the list actually goes on and on. We'll leave it up on the screen and get your thoughts.
Well, there is no question about it that Iran, via their proxies that you just named, many of them, are trying to increase their influence and trying to be regional hegemons in the Middle East. And quite frankly, they have increased their power, certainly in the past decade or so, but their hands are not clean, of course, in financing and influencing terrorism around the region to advance their own political interests. Well,
and we just did a deal with them. We brokered a deal that actually put some more money in their hands, Congressman.
Well, in my opinion, obviously, I'm very overtly against the deal. I believe in the short term, we have helped them finance these proxy folks to gain, so they have gained regional influence in the short term, and in the long term, I think that we've put them on a path to be able to get nuclear weapons, and I think it's the wrong deal and it's bad, and we should do something about it.
All right. Part of your resume is as a former Navy SEAL, and you have been in that part of the world. ISIS. 30 countries plus now. Generals are telling me that they are, even though we're hitting them inside Syria and other places, they're still growing. What is the latest on the Islamic State terror group, which I call the Savages?
Well, you have I like your strength in that statement, but you have a network group, right? So this is unlike anything in the previous to 10 years ago, in terms of them having the ability to grow exponentially via the internet, of course, being able to influence folks from some countries into other ones. We have to have increased communication between not just states, but even cities as well, too, between each other as well. There are certainly physical things that we have to do. We have to kill folks in certain areas and not allow them to have safe harbor, but we also have to combat this online as well, too, and we need partnerships around the world to be able to do that.
Representative Scott Taylor, always great to talk with you. Thank you.
You as well.